Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the MeanGene Show here on KDWN 720 AM, 101.5 FM, Las Vegas. Hope you enjoyed your weekend. Can you believe it, folks? It is already the second weekend in May. This month is really flying by, which is not necessarily a bad thing. The reason why I say that is because next weekend is the home opener for the WNBA Las Vegas Aces. It's a rematch of last year's finals against the Seattle Storm. You don't want to miss that game. It's a noontime start in Seattle. And in 2 weeks, folks, it's the start of the NBA playoffs on Saturday, May 22nd. This year's NBA playoffs is going to be very, very interesting. You have so many great teams in both the Eastern and Western Conference. The Lakers are still the defending champs, though, until further notice. But, they're probably going to have the toughest challenge to not only get into the Western Conference Finals, but getting out of the early rounds of the playoffs, especially if their leader, LeBron James, is not even close to 100%. So last week we took a closer look at the Philadelphia 76ers. This week we're actually going to take a look at the Brooklyn Nets and the New York Knicks with Brian Mahoney from Associated Press. So later on in the show, we will continue to break down the recent NFL draft and see which teams benefited the most with their picks as far as overall. Because I think me and Dustin Pfeiffer actually talked about the first round of the NFL draft. So as you know, the draft took place Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So we will take a look collectively and see what all of the pieces amounted to for these teams as they get ready for the upcoming season and who were the overall winners of this draft. So that should be pretty interesting. And folks, guess what? As of today, Aaron Rodgers is still a member of the Green Bay Packers. For how long? We don't know. But it doesn't appear this story is going away anytime soon, or at least until we announce that he has been traded, which is very likely. We talked about this last week with Dustin Pfeiffer from Fox Sports Southeast. Which, by the way, is now Bally Sports Southeast. And me and Dustin both agreed that this thing with Rodgers and the Packers management will eventually lead to a huge trade. So, come on. You got to who wouldn't want Aaron Rodgers to be their quarterback? And this is one of the things that's interesting about the NFL draft, because some of the teams that sort of knew that this Aaron Rodgers story actually broke, sort of during the NFL draft. So I wonder how many teams made their picks and selections based on, hey, this news. And you got to remember, too, because we covered this in the weeks previous, free agents that teams acquired. So if someone is going to land Aaron Rodgers, they are going to pay a price, which, and it might be worth it. So, now, we knew that we had talked about that the Raiders, the Broncos were some teams that Aaron Rodgers had put out there on this list. So, nothing actually took place in the draft, but it doesn't mean that something will not develop. And if you're John Elway and the Denver Broncos, you're sitting there probably trying to figure out how you're going to do this. He's done it before, right? He got Peyton Manning some kind of way. So, here you're looking at a Super Bowl quarterback, future Hall of Famer quarterback that wants out of Green Bay. And Denver actually have some pieces, that they could probably put together and get Aaron Rodgers. So, it's really going to be interesting, folks. What can we say? It's probably the biggest story, and there's always a story going into the in the NFL offseason. And this is probably one of the biggest ones, and it's going to be. Unfortunately, you know what? I only get to talk about this with you once a week, but believe me, I'm talking about this every day with everyone that I know in my circle. So we will keep you posted on that. Stay tuned. The MeanGene Show is brought to you by the Las Vegas Aces. The WNBA season kicks off May 13th. The Aces' first game of the 2021 season is next Saturday, May 15th, in Seattle versus the Storm. The show is also brought to you by Presidential Limousine by Kaptyn. There's no way you get the Las Vegas experience until you have rode in a Presidential Limousine by Kaptyn. I'm talking a cool driver, champagne on ice, cruising down Las Vegas Boulevard with everyone looking at you in your limo. Doesn't get any better than that. And if you're flying into Las Vegas, Presidential Limousine will pick you up from the airport, take you to your hotel, and they'll do the same when you leave in Vegas. They'll take you back to the airport in style. Get online at presidentiallimo.lv or call and make a reservation, 702-438-5466. Once again, you can go online, presidentiallimo.lv, or you can call and make a reservation, 702-438-5466. All right, moving right along here. So, as we mentioned earlier, not only the Brooklyn Nets are the talk of the town or the talk of New York, how about that other team in the Big Apple? I mean, the original and only team in New York for many years until the old New Jersey Nets came over to Brooklyn just a while ago. So, yes, I'm talking about the New York Knicks. Knicks fans have been the laughingstock of the league for a long time, 10 years, maybe even longer than that. But maybe all of that is coming to an end because this year, and under the leadership of Coach Tom Thibodeau, they are for real. Now, they're on pace to make the playoffs. As a matter of fact, same thing with the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, they continue to go back and forth with the Philadelphia 76ers for that top spot in the Eastern Conference standings. So I think when I spoke with Brian Mahoney from the Associated Press a few days ago, I believe the Nets were in second place. The Knicks, I think they were just coming off a 9-game winning streak, but they are still in the fourth spot over in the Eastern Conference. And what we're going to do is listen to that conversation in its entirety here on the MeanGene Show. My next guest is a very well-known national NBA sports writer for the Associated Press. He covers both the New York Knicks and the Brooklyn Nets, and we are honored to have him here on the MeanGene Show. Please welcome Brian Mahoney. Brian, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm jealous. I'm jealous because you get to cover both teams in New York. And, man, I want to talk about the New York Knicks first because as it sits right now, they are the fourth seed in the Eastern Conference Finals, and this is something that is breaking news as far as the season goes. How are the Knicks doing it?
Well, they got a nice group that really kind of just maximizes what they are. No one really saw this coming at all. We thought maybe they could fight for a low playoff spot if everything went right, but certainly not a team that was, in the middle of the race now, fourth place, as you said, and just having a great year from Julius Randle. And, the role players have all gotten better as the year went on. They defend really well, like a Tom Thibodeau team you would expect them to do. And they just have a lot of belief. And that's what he keeps talking about. When you believe you can win, a lot of times you do. And right now, that's where the Knicks are.
And you know what, Brian, we shouldn't be surprised from the works and the resume of Tom Thibodeau. I mean, we saw it, with the Bulls. I guess he was trying to get something done there in Minnesota, but man, now, I mean, you look at the Knicks, this team is just coming off, 9 straight victories, and man, one of the most underrated coaches in the NBA. Would you agree?
Well, he's done a great job, and obviously we knew what he did in Chicago, and he did turn around Minnesota that one year, got them back in the playoffs after whatever it was, 13 years or so, and then things kind of went south the next year when Jimmy Butler wanted to get traded. But the Knicks are lucky to have him. They needed someone who, does what he does, focusing on the defense, getting a lot of buy-in from the younger guys. He believes in hard work, and not every player wants to do that, but they have enough guys on this team that do that. What he is saying, they're listening to, and it's working.
How important was it for him to get Derrick Rose and Taj Gibson on his team? I mean, I know he's worked with them in the past, but how important was that?
Well, it's been more important than I thought. When they went out and got Derrick Rose, I thought, all right, he's not playing terrible. He's still okay, but he's not going to make much difference for this team. I wasn't even really sure why he wanted to come here at that time. And then, Taj Gibson thought, okay, well, he'll play hard, but I'm not sure how much game is left at this point. He's been a guy who's played tough his whole career, and, that wears you down. But the bottom line is they have been so key coming off that bench. He trusts them. Derrick Rose, I'm really impressed by how much he still can do without, with the injuries he's had through his career, without the explosiveness, obviously, that he had when he was a younger player. But he's still, coming in and turning that team around when he gets in the game. And, again, having guys who know a coach's system makes a pretty big difference. That the players don't always listen to the coach; they listen to the guys who know what the coach is saying.
Absolutely, folks. Once again, we are talking with Brian Mahoney. He covers the New York Knicks and the Brooklyn Nets from the Associated Press here on the MeanGene Show. So, we mentioned about the 9-game streak there that the Knicks ran, but, as I look here at the later part here, as we, are nearing the end of the regular season, I mean, they have a stretch coming up here, Brian, with the Denver Nuggets, the Phoenix Suns, at the Clippers, and at the Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, what do you think is going to happen there?
Well, that's it's funny, Gene, because even the fans who really, really are loving this team were a little afraid about what lies ahead. You can, you can go from where they are 4, you can drop right out of the playoffs with a trip like that. But the bottom line is they've done all they can do right now. They just had this homestand of 6 games. They went 5-1. The only way to get yourself ready for a trip like that is to take care of home first. You don't want to have to go on the road to face that kind of trip, knowing you just went 3-3 or 2-4. They had a great homestand. At least that gives them some room. Even if things go poorly, they still should be, in that play-in spot at worst. They built up a nice little cushion ahead of that 10th place spot, which is the most important thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I looking at the Hawks, Celtics, and Heat and Hornets, and like you mentioned, the play-in thing. That schedule is going to be brutal, but I'm sure those other teams have tough games as well. So I want to move it over to the Brooklyn Nets now, who are sitting atop the Eastern Conference, winners of 4 in a row. And what are the expectations of the Brooklyn Nets?
Well, if they have all their guys, it's NBA Finals. They believe that they can beat anyone with the firepower they have if Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden are on the floor. But they've only had that 7 times, and time's running out. So there is some concern about having to try and figure this out. Will they ever get everyone there? If they do get them all there, will they have enough time to play together again? But they have an incredibly high ceiling if all the pieces are there. No one has that kind of firepower.
And how would you grade their coach, Steve Nash? I mean, how would you grade his performance as a coach in his first year as an NBA coach with this type of firepower?
Way better than I think I would have expected. He's a smart guy, obviously, and he manages relationships well. We knew that stuff would all happen. But as far as X's and O's and juggling lineups, this year's been hard for any coach, veteran coach or not, with the guys in and out, with the coronavirus protocols, all that kind of stuff. To do it in your first year is hard. And the bottom line, again, is if they don't have these guys who, it's one thing if Steve Nash is winning always on talent. He's not. Sometimes they have only one of those 3 guys. And you've got to find a way he's used 33, 35 different kinds of lineups. And it's a lot that he's had to learn on a first year. I think he's done very well.
Now, you talk about these lineups, and this is what, we are saying out here on the West Coast is that, okay, well, we really think these guys are messing with the NBA because at any point in time, he can get those 3 out there, and he's just really, taking his time and easing through the season, getting to the playoffs, and we will definitely see all 3 of these players.
Well, that's what Nets fans hope. That's for sure. They hope you're right about that. It's hard to say. Obviously Kevin Durant's had injuries the last couple of years, and there's always going to be that fear. James Harden has, he played a lot this year when Durant was out and Kyrie Irving was out. So, hamstring is something where, you always worry about that flaring up again. So they have concerns, but sure, there is certainly the reason to think maybe they're just kind of taking it easy and resting guys here and there. And if that's the case and they do have all their guys, then, they're going to be tough to beat. But everyone's a little concerned that may not be the case.
And you know what else too, Brian? A lot of folks are saying, okay, well, when you look at a team like the Lakers last year winning the championship and with that leadership of LeBron James, even with the Miami Heat, with Butler. So the big question remains, who is the leader? Who can actually lead this team from the Brooklyn Nets?
Well, the good thing they have going there is their three guys are all pretty close, and I think they feel like they can kind of share doing that. Whereas one guy doesn't have to be the guy. Obviously Kevin Durant has the best resume, but he's not always the most vocal guy. I don't necessarily think. Kyrie Irving, I think, wants to be more vocal. I don't know that he's necessarily learned everything he needs to learn about leadership yet. So it's hard to kind of say one guy is that guy. Certainly no one at that LeBron level, like you mentioned, Jimmy Butler last year for Miami. But they have relationships with each other that they feel like they can kind of do it together, and no one's feelings are going to get hurt per se if this is not the guy who's being the leader on that particular day.
Okay, well, I gotta give it to the New York fans. Whatever team you like. I mean, you're in a pretty good position, and wow, it's just amazing that you're gonna see two teams there from New York in the playoffs. So, hey, Brian, man, I thank you for your time, and I hope I know you're about to get busy here covering both of these teams, and hopefully we can get lucky and get you back on the show again.
I'd love to. We don't have many years where it's been this much to talk about. I've been on these teams for a long time, and I've never even got to a conference finals with either of these two teams. So maybe this is the year.
I know it. Hey, we keep our fingers crossed for you folks. Once again, Brian Mahoney from the Associated Press on the MeanGene Show here on KDWN 101.5 FM, 720 AM. So while I'm listening to Brian talk about both of these teams and how exciting it would be for the fans in New York and himself, not having anything to cover these years, but I didn't realize, conference finals. It's been a long time since either one of these teams have made the conference finals, and they are on a collision course to meet in the conference finals. You just never know. And, Tom Thibodeau, even if the Knicks don't go far, they could be a first round eliminated team this year, but you gotta look at the future and say, okay, man, things are going to look good. Both of those teams are going to be a force to be reckoned with. Same thing with the Brooklyn Nets, and it's conference finals, like he said, for the Brooklyn Nets. With this team and this firepower, they have to get to that point. They have to get to the conference finals, or else there's going to be a bust. But I remember having conversations with some peers of mine in the industry, and we talked about the Miami Heat when LeBron James, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, and that team got together. And even in that first season, how rough it was. They started out, just the chemistry thing was a big question, and leadership was even a big question because I think, LeBron was trying to, respect Dwayne Wade by saying, hey, this is your team. You've already won a championship with this team, and so, you saw that. But at the same time, you saw Dwayne Wade kind of let it go. He said, hey, no, hey, you take over, you run it, and let's do it. And then only when that happened, I think, you saw that the Miami Heat was able to get to a sweet spot and go on and win some championships. So, I kind of see that same thing happening with Brooklyn. But this team, I don't know. This team, minus the leadership, though, I just can't really put them on that same scale as the Miami Heat team because they don't have a leader, and that's why, me and Brian, talked about that. They don't have a LeBron James-like type person, but what you have seen lately, is that any one of those guys individually can take over a game now. That's, if that's the type of leadership we're talking about, then yeah, Kevin Durant can take over a game. James Harden can take over a game, and we've seen Kyrie Irving take over a game. And pretty much like we see with Julius Randle taking over games for the New York Knicks. So, and Tom Thibodeau has been able to, he brings in, Taj Gibson and Derrick Rose, people that he can trust, to play some good defense. And he inherited a Julius Randle. And man, this is where coaching just really, steps up and steps in and get it done. So you ask me who's the better coach between Steve Nash and and Tom Thibodeau. I'm going to say Tom Thibodeau, and I mean neither one of them has won a championship as a head coach, but they are certainly, looking good. And Steve Nash, and I have to admit, that I have, been a little tough on Steve Nash. Wasn't really a fan of, proven guys getting head coaching jobs in the NBA without, spending that time on the bench as an assistant and doing, what you're supposed to do. But Steve Nash has assembled some of the, some great coaches around him. Mike D'Antoni, someone who he's very familiar with. Jock Vaughn, who has been around. I mean, so he's really got a good cast. And then, not to mention, the guys respect him. I hear nothing but great things as far as the players and their relationship with Steve Nash. I mean, you haven't really heard or seen any flare-up or any type of confrontation or anything coming from that team, and Mike D'Antoni seems to know his role. So it seems to be gelling pretty good. And then, I mean, just the lineup at his disposal is just unbelievable. Somehow Blake Griffin has found his way into the starting lineup. And then I think the one person that rarely gets mentioned is the veteran Jeff Green, who, man, I mean, just one of the most underrated players in the NBA, and he continues to, despite the health scare he had years ago, it's just so exciting to see this guy out there. He is a hell of a basketball player. I guess if you had to pick a leader, he's a quiet leader. I mean, he goes out there and gets it done, and night in, night out, and it's just going to be exciting to see exactly how far this Brooklyn Nets team is going to go in that conference finals. I can see it, but you got to look at, some of those other teams where Miami is going to fall, and Milwaukee. You certainly can't count the Bucks out of this thing. I know we didn't really talk about the Bucks in that interview, but at the same time, it's just going to be one great NBA playoffs. I mean, and what I really like about the NBA playoffs, because, despite, I think the only knock is that play-in tournament. I think we done beat that to death to where at first I liked it. I liked it in the bubble because, I mean, it was interesting to see teams, have that chance to get in. It just made it a little bit fun because we had the pandemic going on and no one was allowed to go to games and all of that craziness, but nevertheless, to continue it on, and I think enough people are going to cry wolf and fight about it and say, nah, we don't really like it. I think we should moving forward, and we just have to see how it pans out now, because I still look at a team like the Washington Wizards, who I think they were in the 11th seed, I think, last week. I think they're in the 10th seed now, so that team could actually get in because they are playing great ball. Russell Westbrook is putting up these triple digits again. That's a team that either Brooklyn or Philadelphia is going to have to face. And, you play a Washington Wizards team in the first round, whether you're Brooklyn or Philadelphia, you're looking at a 7-game series, in my opinion. So that's something we're going to have to watch out for. So anyway, we are getting ready to take a break. And when we come back, folks, we're going to be talking about the NFL draft, looking at the overall AFC West draft grades. And I know you probably want to know because last week we talked about the AFC West first round picks, but now we get to collectively look at the entire package from the Raiders, the Chargers, the Broncos, and the Chiefs. You don't want to miss it because you definitely want to see where the Las Vegas Raiders finish as far as grades in the 2021 NFL draft. So, all right. Once again, you're listening to the MeanGene Show right here on KDWN 101.5 FM, 720 AM, Las Vegas. Okay, welcome back to the second half of the MeanGene Show here on KDWN 720 AM, 101.5 FM. Hey, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Sports Kings. You can also follow me on Instagram, Sports Kings Podcast, and our website, TheMeanGeneShow.com. TheMeanGeneShow.com. And once again, the show is brought to you by Presidential Limousine by Kaptyn and the Las Vegas Aces. Also, remember, folks, you can still jump on the chance to win a free trip to Las Vegas for two. This includes airline tickets, hotel stay, and a limo ride to and from the airport, compliments of Presidential Limousine by Kaptyn. All you have to do is simply follow me on Twitter and retweet the Trip to Las Vegas contest. The contest runs through the month of May. We will pick a winner in June and notify them with a direct message via Twitter. All right, so make sure you can also go to the website to get more contest details, TheMeanGeneShow.com. Now, last week we looked at the first round picks for each of the AFC West teams. This evening, we're going to take a look at some of the other picks in the later rounds of that NFL draft as it relates to the AFC West. And I will also give you my overall grade for the entire division outside the AFC. I will give you my thoughts on who had the best overall draft in the NFL. Now, you may be surprised by my selection. This information, folks, requires a ton of research, including listening to all the experts. We're talking TV, online, and print media. But, when it comes to TV, Mel Kiper Jr. seems to be the go-to guy on who's going to have success in the NFL. Now, I want to warn you that Mel Kiper Jr., as passionate as he is not always right about his assessment of a player's future success. And if you don't believe me, there's a YouTube video out there on every team's pick that Mel Kiper Jr. was wrong about. And it's some pretty amazing stuff, too. I mean, who can forget Baltimore Ravens Hall of Famer Ed Reed dissing Mel Kiper on national TV? I think they were interviewing him on Monday Night Football or so after his selection. And, he just said, why do you people still listen to this guy? Because Mel Kiper did not pick Ed Reed to have success in the NFL, and he damn sure didn't pick him to be a future NFL Hall of Famer. So, to this day, Mel Kiper Jr. still continues to go all in on who will be a success or failure in the NFL. So, as it relates to myself, okay, I am no expert on saying who's going to be great in the NFL. My hope is that everyone that was drafted has some kind of success in the NFL. Now, we know this is not always the case, but at least everyone gets a fair chance. But, when you have a major figure like Mel Kiper Jr., who might give bad press on the player, there's always some NFL GM out there listening to this stuff and will make a decision based on what he or she has heard. And it's not a good thing for the player. This is why you have so many undrafted players after an NFL draft who has to go the extra mile to prove themselves, and we see it every year. Some of those guys would never make the National Football League. So this is sort of where it starts. So based on my research, this is what I have on the AFC West draft picks and the overall grade the team received based on those picks. And, of course, we are going to start with the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, we talked about Alex Leatherwood, the offensive tackle from Alabama. He was the first pick, the number 17 pick that the Raiders had in the first round. A head-scratcher, but at the same time, you can't say that the Raiders didn't need this guy. But I said last week, he just wasn't a high-value pick at that time. So if he pans out, offensive tackle, hey, it's not a glamour position, but, man, it means a lot to a quarterback. And I'm sure Derek Carr is probably not upset about the pick. And this guy just might be the most important player to David Carr's success, so we'll see how that goes. In the second round, they had the 43rd pick, so they decided to go with Trayvon Moehrig, a safety out of TCU. In the third round, they had the 79th pick, and they went with Malcolm Kuntz. He's an edge guy from Buffalo. And then they also had the 80th pick, two picks in the third round. they went with Divine Diablo, a safety out of Virginia Tech. In the 4th round, with the 143rd pick, they chose Tyree Gillespie, a safety from Missouri. 5th round, the 167th pick, Nate Hobbs, a cornerback from Illinois. And then their final pick in round 7, 230. Hey, not far from Mr. Irrelevant, right? But he wasn't Mr. Irrelevant. They chose a center, Jimmy Morrissey, out of Pittsburgh. I would say, a total of 7 picks there for the Raiders. You can't go wrong on defense now. I mean, you have to just really, hope that these things work out. Nate Hobbs, Tyree Gillespie, and Divine Diablo. I mean, in rounds 3, 4, and 5, they really looked at the defense there. So we'll see how that pans out. But that first round pick is still the talk of the league. I mean, everyone is still looking at that. And based on how the Raiders' previous first round surprises have worked out or didn't work out, Clelin Ferrell, Damon Arnett, it's just certain people out there that when it comes to the Raiders choosing players, people are really, really, on edge when it comes to that. John Gruden, Mike Mayock, this is what they wanted. This is their team. This is their era. So they're, this is what it's going to be like going into 2021. Let's take a look. So overall grade, I'm sorry, I did say I would give an overall grade. I would say, man, I want to go B- with these picks, but it's just so hard to do, especially with the number 1 pick now. And we could be wrong. I don't want to be a Mel Kiper Jr. here, the dissonance guy here, the way I just did. But still, how about a C+? Can we give a C+? I don't want to give a B- because I think that's kind of too high, but we would go C+ with the Raiders' 7 picks in this 2021 draft. So that's what we'll do. Let's look at how about we go with the Chargers? Let's see what they did, because the Chargers are certainly one of those teams that they had 9 picks overall in the NFL draft. When we talked about the number 1 pick there, they had not the number 1 pick. They had the 13th pick in the first round, and that was Rashawn Slater, the offensive tackle from Northwestern, which, hey, no one's complaining. No one's complaining, especially Justin Herbert is not complaining, because they just figure, hey, this was a guy they needed. They know Herbert is going to be a great quarterback in the National Football League, and to make sure that that's the case, that's why you go out and get a Rashawn Slater. So in the 2nd round, they had the 47th pick, and here's a name that we are familiar with, Asante Samuel Jr., cornerback out of Florida State. Man, this was the year that this was the year of the daddy's baby boy, however you want to say that. But anyway, Patrick Surtain, and that's the 2nd. He's not a junior. He's Patrick Surtain the 2nd, went to Denver Broncos, and Asante Samuel Jr. And then we also had J.C. Horn, the son of Joe Horn, who played with the New Orleans Saints. So how about that? Former players' sons in the NFL, and man, automatic mentorship right there. I mean, who could prepare you better than your father, who all of those guys had success in the NFL. So Asante Samuel Jr., cornerback, Florida State, with the 47th pick. In round 3, they decided to beef up the offense a little bit. They had the 77th pick. They chose Josh Palmer, wide receiver out of Tennessee. And with the 97th pick in that 3rd round, Trey McKitty, a tight end out of Georgia. So, look, I'm always going to be the one that say that if you can get anybody out of the SEC, mainly defensive players though, but still, the SEC is the SEC. Round 3, I would say that the Chargers did pretty damn good already. Looking at the 4th round, they had the 118th pick, so they decided to go with an edge rusher out of Duke and Chris Rump the 2nd. And round 5, with the 159th pick, Brendan Himes, offensive tackle from Nebraska. 2 picks in the 6th round, the 185th pick, Nick Neiman, linebacker from Iowa. And with the 198th pick, it was Larry Roundtree the 3rd, a running back out of Missouri. And I said they had 9 picks, right? So round 7, with the 241st pick, they chose a safety, Mark Webb, out of Georgia. So a lot of players And I would have to say, wow, I mean, the Chargers didn't do bad. I mean, they got their offensive tackle there with the first pick with Rashawn in the first round, the 13th pick with Rashawn Slater. And they didn't do bad on the defense end, getting Asante Samuel Jr., the cornerback, and Chris Rump, the edge rusher, and then Nick Neiman, the linebacker. And then on offense, they sort of went all over the place. They got a running back, wide receiver, and a tight end. I would have to say overall that this, oh man, how about an A maybe, because it's just that they covered their needs. And now we still have to see if these players are going to pan out and be what they expect them to be. But anytime you meet your needs and then you have a little extra there, I think that's going to work out for the Chargers. So I give them an A. How about we go with the Broncos now? The Broncos had 10 picks. You really got to get it right. And I said the Broncos needed every damn thing, right? So they almost got an entire lineup, 10 picks. You know, you just need one more. You got a whole new squad, a whole starting lineup there. They had the 9th pick in the first round, and that was Patrick Surtain, the second cornerback from Alabama. Second round, they added a running back. And the Broncos over the years, man, they have drafted a lot of running backs, traded for a lot of running backs, picked up running backs in free agency. For some reason, it just hasn't worked. And I don't know exactly what it is. I don't know. Maybe they should find a new running backs coach or something. I don't know. Running backs, I mean, we haven't, since Terrell Davis in those Super Bowl years, we just haven't really seen a great running back in the Denver Broncos backfield. But they think they have one now with Javonte Williams, running back out of North Carolina. They picked him up in the second round with the 35th pick. They jumped on him quite early in that second round. So we'll see if he is going to be the future of the Denver Broncos. Over in the third round, they chose 2 players with the 98th pick, Quinn Miners, center from Wisconsin's Whitewater. He's going to be their future center, hopefully. And with the 105th pick in the third round, they went with Baron Browning, a linebacker from Ohio State. Not bad. I don't think you can go wrong getting anyone from Ohio State there in the third round. So in the fifth round, they had 2 picks. They had the 152nd pick and the 164th pick. And they went with 2 safety. Caden Stearns, a safety from Texas. Jamar Johnson, a safety from Indiana. Quite interesting there. Instant competition, right? You know, not only do you have to compete with the safeties that they already have, or the second-year safeties, or some of the veterans, but you come in the door with another safety, and you're going to be competing there. So we should see. Remember, there's a limited preseason this year, so you're only going to get 3. So we're going to have to really pay attention to what's happening in the mini camps, OTAs, and all of that, training camps, to see which one of these safeties will be the best. My opinion is that one of these guys will probably not make the team, and I'm not trying to sound like Mel Kiper, but that's a lot of safeties. I mean, unless they were just completely short on safeties, and you can't go wrong on defense. And I said that the Broncos needed everything, right? So it looked like they went out and definitely made sure they had safeties in that 5th round. In the 6th round, with the 219th pick, they got a wide receiver, Seth Williams from Auburn. And with the 7th round, in the 7th round, they had 3 picks. And I think they did pretty good with these picks. All defense. With the 237th pick, they got Kerry Vincent Jr., cornerback from LSU. With the 239th pick, they got Jonathan Cooper, defensive end, Ohio State. And with the 253rd pick, they got Marquise Spencer, defensive end from Mississippi State. You got some. Look, Ohio State, you can't go wrong. You got a linebacker from Ohio State. You got a defensive end from Ohio State. Then we're talking defense here. Then looking at the SEC, good Lord, you got Patrick Surtain from Alabama. You got Kerry Vincent Jr. from LSU. And then Marquise Spencer from Mississippi State. So they hit the SEC pretty damn good. Like I said, they got 10 players, one shy of a complete starting NFL lineup there. Wow, this is pretty interesting. So I'm going to give the Denver Broncos an A-. Don't let the A fool you. I mean, it's just an A- because, man, they covered their needs and then some. So I mean, you should see some improvement. What were they? 5-11 last year, I think. So, they were at the bottom of the AFC West. Should be some improvement. And, like we mentioned earlier, Aaron Rodgers wants to play for either the Broncos, the Raiders. I can't remember the other team you mentioned, but, who knows? And I also stated earlier in the show that if anyone had the pieces to move in order to get an Aaron Rodgers, it's the Broncos. I mean, look at all these picks here. I mean, and this is what I said, that teams, when they get wind of something like that, Aaron Rodgers said, hey, man, I'm okay with Denver. And then John Elway is still in the front office, still calling, shots there. Hey, let's load up on defense. Let's load up on assets here. So if we do get Aaron Rodgers, they got hello. I mean, they got the people. They got the people to do so. And then, of course, hey, I mean, this is going to be interesting. Like I said, the Denver Broncos, I would not be surprised if Aaron Rodgers is going to be the quarterback. Now, I feel bad for Teddy Bridgewater because he'll be a backup quarterback eventually if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback for the Denver Broncos. Now, well, we've covered the Raiders, the Chargers, and the Broncos. There's only one team left, and that is your defending AFC champions, Kansas City Chiefs. No first-round pick for the Chiefs, but in the second round, they did have 2 picks. They had the 58th pick and the 63rd pick. So with the 58th pick, they got Nick Bolton, a linebacker from Missouri, and with the 63rd pick, they got Creed Humphrey, a center from Oklahoma. In round 4, they didn't have a third-round pick. They gave that up. They went from round 2 to round 4. And they only got 6 total picks overall because the Kansas City Chiefs were involved in some trades in the offseason. In round 4, they had the 144th pick, and they chose a defensive end from Florida State, Joshua Kandu. Round 5, they had 2 picks, the 162nd pick and the 181st pick. With the 162nd pick of the 5th round, they chose a tight end, Noel Gray from Duke. Can't go wrong with a tight end. I mean, Travis Kelce, nothing's wrong with him, but still, this tight ends play in the NFL now. Tight ends get a lot of playing time, so I could say, man, you're talking about instant opportunity. Noel Gray will probably be out there depending on how things work out in camp. And with the 181st pick in the 5th round, the Kansas City Chiefs chose Cornell Powell, a wide receiver from Clemson. So not bad, right? Clemson, good team there. And with the 226th pick of round 6, they chose Trey Smith, a guard, offensive guard from Tennessee. So they get someone from the SEC. So you remember Kansas City spent a lot of their draft picks there to get Orlando Brown from the Ravens, and this was last month. So they definitely had to secure that left tackle position. So that's why they gave up some picks, and I mean, they had to do that and to definitely take care of Patrick Mahomes, the $500 million quarterback there. Where would I grade the Chiefs? They covered their needs. They basically got what they needed. They had limited choices. They did a lot of work in the offseason and free agency, but they still were able to get the players that they needed. I'm really okay with the tight end, Noah Gray, out of Duke. So we're going to see how that works out. And they were able to get a linebacker, that second pick there, Nick Bolton, out of Missouri. So I think Kansas City is going to be okay. So I would give them a B- overall. I would say that would be my choice there. I also mentioned I would look at some other teams and how they did overall as far as a grade in the NFL draft last week. And let's start with that horrific NFC East division. Remember, no one wanted to win that thing. The Washington football team eventually won. Dallas and Philadelphia and New York were all within reach of winning that division. And you got to think a division that bad really needed this draft to improve along with free agency. The Eagles and the Cowboys got what they needed most. Cowboys got a linebacker to replace Sean Lee in that first round. And the Eagles added Heisman Trophy winner Devontae Smith to play alongside his former teammate Jalen Hurts. And that should be interesting. And what really made it interesting is that the Cowboys moved down to allow the Eagles to get the Heisman Trophy winner. So I really can't wait to see how that plays out because, the Cowboys and Eagles play each other twice in that division. So you got to figure with the linebacker pick and the Heisman Trophy wide receiver picked by the Eagles, they will be on the field at the same time during the regular season. So it's going to be interesting to see who gets the better of that draft pick there. Can't wait to see. But as far as a grade, and when I say grade, I guess it would have to be an A for all of these teams we're going to talk about here in these other divisions. I would give the Dallas Cowboys a grade A. I think they got the better draft. They got 11 players, mostly defense, and that's what they needed. Let's look at the AFC North. The Browns and Steelers got what they needed to improve. Browns added some defensive picks. The Steelers added a running back and some protection for Big Ben. As you know, the Steelers lost their running back, Connors. He went over to the Arizona Cardinals. So they drafted a running back with the first in the first round with their pick. I think it was the 24th pick. And they got some protection for Big Ben as well. The Ravens and Bengals didn't do all that bad. Overall, I think all four of the teams in that division improved. But if I have to give out an A grade as far as who had the better draft in that division, it would be the Cleveland Browns. And that should be very exciting for Cleveland Browns fans. I mean, they didn't go as deep as they wanted in the NFL playoffs last year, but they did have some exciting moments in 2020. The AFC East, the Jets and Patriots get quarterbacks. Dolphins improved their offense. The Bills improved their defense. I think the Jets had the better draft in that division, so we'll see how it all goes with their quarterback. I mean, they got a long road ahead of them. You know, they were 2-14 last season, so let's see if they improve. And if they do, that's only going to make the AFC East that much more competitive. So really should be exciting to see. Over in the NFC West, you know, the Seattle Seahawks had the fierce draft picks in the draft. They only had 3, but they did add another wide receiver for Russell Wilson. 49ers who kept, and speaking of Russell Wilson, we're not hearing about Russell Wilson wants out of Seattle anymore. I guess all of that talk has been squashed. Now it's Aaron Rodgers who's getting all the quarterback news there. But so Russell Wilson has another target to throw to, which should be interesting as well. They still have one hell of an offense there in Seattle. 49ers who kept everyone on edge, waiting to see who they was going to take with that third pick. In that first round, and they probably ended up with the better draft. I would give the 49ers the A grade as far as the draft in the NFC West. Rams and Cardinals did most of their damage in free agency. Only time would tell if the 49ers will be able to compete again. And you know what? It's hard to believe that the 49ers were in the Super Bowl less than 2 years ago. Very, very interesting. So, well, guess what? That's going to wrap up things for this week's show. I want to thank my guest, Brian Mahoney from the Associated Press, for joining us here on the MeanGene Show to talk NBA basketball, specifically the New York Knicks and the Brooklyn Nets. Don't forget to get in on the free trip to Las Vegas contest. For more details, visit my website, themeangeneshow.com. Huge thanks to my assistant, Ray Lee Cadenhead, for getting all of our guests on the show. All right. I mean, she's responsible for bringing everybody on the show, and she does a hell of a job. And don't forget about the start of the WNBA season next Thursday, May 13th. But more importantly, don't forget about the home opener for the Las Vegas Aces. Friday night, May 21st, 7:30 start time. It's the Los Angeles Sparks at the Las Vegas Aces at the Mandalay Bay Event Center. Cannot wait. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend. I will be right back here next Saturday on the MeanGene Show, 7:20 a.m., 101.5 FM, KDWN, Las Vegas.